Hello everyone, welcome to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Racing Weekly, the sport of horse racing, indeed the nation, reflecting on the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen. Alongside me, Sam Turner and Steve Ryder. Steve, welcome to the show. Obviously, right now, we are talking about what is a sad time, obviously for the nation, but indeed also for the sport of horse racing, where Her Majesty the Queen has been such a strong advocate, passionate supporter of the sport for longer than we can all remember.
Yeah, I mean, with me, I obviously a little bit younger than the pair of you. I mean, the first derby I went to was 2011. Seeing Carlton House obviously sent off favourite for the derby that year. It would have been a big thing that day. Good atmosphere on there, and that was kind of my earliest memory, I suppose, of the Queen through horse racing.
So many horses, going back to so close to the coronation and the derby, all the way through to the latter years of her reign, where she still had that burning passion to succeed with the horses. And obviously this time last year we were all excited about the potential, for example, of Reach for the Moon. But there have been some wonderful moments in racing for Her Majesty the Queen.
Yeah, I mean, she was racing's greatest ambassador, really, wasn't she? I mean, her passion and her just joy of the sport just emerged through everything she did. And when she was on the race course with the horses, that's where she was at her happiest, I think, and also almost at Balmoral or Windsor Castle, wherever she was riding horses, that seemed where she was at her most content. Steve touched on there, the Carlton House had that setback, didn't he? Got beat at length by Pourmoire, the only classic to evade her, really. She won 4 of the other 5. Some great horses along the way as well. And she was champion flat owner 1954 and 1957. Yeah. Incredible, nearly 70 years ago. And she just transcended the sport as well, really. And people who went to Royal Ascot just for a social day, it was a big part of their day to see the procession go up the race course and, what colour hat the Queen was going to be wearing. And it's just... And if you were lucky enough to be stood around that parade ring at Ascot when the carriages all came in, and you managed to see how she interacted with the horses, she was absolutely enthralled. I mean, they were absolutely beautifully turned out, weren't they, the horses that led the carriages? And she would spend time just talking to the footman or whoever was looking after the horses, and that's where she was at her happiest, I think.
The images of her watching Estimate win the Gold Cup all those years ago remain one of the most vivid, vibrant images that you can recount in racing in the last couple of decades, I'd say, Steve. Yeah,
definitely, and the way that Ryan Moore kind of talked through it as well, of being able to doff the cap to her as well. It was just a fantastic memory. Obviously, she had lots of success at Royal Ascot most recently, I suppose, with Tactical and winning the Windsor Castle as well. So, yeah, like Sam says, that meeting, Royal Ascot, was built around the Queen, really.
Yes.
Everyone, fans, getting a glimpse of her around the parade ring and everything. It was, fantastic.
It's a great ride as well, wasn't it? I mean, Ryan absolutely lifted it home. And just seeing the pictures be played out on the racecourse as well, because obviously they weren't shown live. Everybody was transfixed by what was a brilliant horse race, wasn't it? But then afterwards, you could hear the sort of the groundswell of, warmth and enjoyment that people were getting, seeing the Queen's enjoyment. The Estimate was, winning the Gold Cup, one of, the feature race of the week at Royal Ascot. And she pretty much embodied Royal Ascot, didn't she? She hardly missed one until her latter years, unfortunately, and she was never present. 5 days as well. We talk about it's a bit of a grind for us. But you imagine if you're in your 70s and 80s going, look, I know, she doesn't have to work when she gets there and it is enjoyment, etc. But it's still quite a full-on week. And, to manage to have the longevity to do that for so many years, 5 days a week. And it was just brilliant to have her associated with our sport, really. Yeah. We were so lucky.
Yes, her loss will be felt deeply by so many, but particularly in the sport of horse racing. Sam, Steve, thank you for the moment. Here in Racing Weekly, we send our deepest condolences to the royal family, and we would also like to say thank you to Her Majesty the Queen as we pay our respects to someone who's been such a great supporter of our sport for so long. This week on Racing Recap, there is a lot to look back on. Thankfully, racing resumed on the weekend domestically on Sunday with an excellent card at Doncaster. And of course, in Ireland, Irish Champions Weekend went ahead and we have some wonderful racing to look back on. We'll stick to the domestic action first of all, Steve, and we'll look back on Eldar Eldarov winning the Ledger, New London in behind, a couple of shenanigans involving Frankie Dettori, etc. We'll talk about all of that. First of all, your opinion on how good a Ledger it was and how good a winner Eldar Eldarov was.
Coming into the race, I was a little bit dubious of how good a race it was. I really did think New London would prove hard to beat. At the end of the day, kind of proven stamina over a mile and 6 kind of proved the most important factor with the ground on the day, I think. New London, I didn't think really had any excuses. The race seemed to go well for him, and he just seemed to be outstayed really at the end by Eldar Eldarov. Looking back at the race, they're both under pressure at the same time. Eldar Eldarov just kept going to the line, really. Obviously, he already won over the trip earlier on in the Queen's Vase, earlier in the season. And without that below par effort over a mile and a half in France, it'd have probably been a lot shorter of a price. In hindsight, looking back at the Irish Champion Stakes that we'll do later, the form obviously received a boost with Ernesto finishing a close second, who obviously beat him that day. But yeah, I didn't really give Eldar Eldarov a huge chance with it. Like you touched on, the race was kind of marred a little bit by the steward's decision to demote Haskoy, obviously from second to fourth following that interference against the rail. It wouldn't surprise me if Connections will appeal that decision. But yeah, on the whole, I thought it was a really good race to look back on, and probably a bit better of a race than what I thought it would be coming into it.
Well, Connections do have Rafe Becker. They have previous in the Ledger, of course, Simple Verse.
Simple Verse, yeah.
Bondi Beach back in the day, lost the race on the day, then won it on appeal. So there's a possibility if they followed that line of thinking.
Yeah.
Sam, how good a winner do you think Eldar Eldarov was?
Certainly a strong stayer, and I love the way that he just kept finding. I mean, we know from the Queen's Vase win that the trip was never going to be an issue with him, but he was one of the first off the bridle and just kept grinding away up the straight at Doncaster. He coped with the ground. I felt better than New London. Just rolled around a little bit on it. I was a bit disappointed in his performance, really, but speed figure is very good. The best Eldar Eldarov's achieved this season. And there was a lot of significant late money for him as well, so I think there was a fair bit of confidence behind his chance. So big win, obviously, for his Connections. Big win as well for David Egan.
I was going to mention that. And serendipity, fate, however you want to describe it.
Smashing lad by all accounts. Really, really good lad. Head down and has kept quiet about losing the job and losing the ride on Mishrif, and he's been paid dividends. It's been a bit of a lukewarm season as well for Roger Varian, so that's put a little bit of gloss on it towards the tail end of the campaign. Yeah,
Roger Varian, of course, had won the Ledger a few years back with Kingston Hill, but he's already. I think you looked at Kingston Hill, you thought he would be potentially a mile and a half, mile and 6 horse, whereas this horse, they're pretty adamant. Cup races for him next year. We'll talk about Kyprios a little bit later on. How live a challenger is he to Kyprios, do you think, in the next 12 months or so, Steve?
I definitely think he is. He's got that Royal Ascot form. He's done it on a variety of grounds. There's very little kind of question marks going into it. You never really know until they do go that 2.5 miles. You can be a good stayer over 2 miles and not get that extra trip. But yeah, it looks the race made for him, and his campaign's definitely going to be targeted towards the race.
That'd be quite exciting.
Only his 4th start as well. And like Steve says, got the Ascot form already. Has been typically Roger Varian handled, really. Hasn't been asked to go to too many parties, has he? Been kept fresh and well. Not sure we'll see him again this year. I don't know what the quotes were afterwards, whether they were contemplating going anywhere at the tail end of the season, but he's done his job this year. He's won a classic, and onwards and upwards for him. Yeah,
so cup races for Eldar Eldarov next year, and a couple of horses he will likely encounter in that, met in the Doncaster Cup as well. We all expected Trushan. I mean, if we're all honest about it, we kind of all expected Trushan in a sort of procession success. But Coltrane upset the apple cart on a good run from Lismore Hill as well. What were your initial thoughts about Trushan's performance? Were you disappointed that he was beaten?
I was. He lost the race himself, didn't he? He raced too keenly in the early stages and then wandered around under pressure. There's an interesting interview with Alan King afterwards. He's kind of blamed himself for running at Goodwood earlier in the season on that faster ground and thinks it's kind of left his mark on him. I was a big fan of Coltrane earlier on in the season. Looked really progressive. But I don't know about you, I was a little bit disappointed on his last couple of starts. I really did think he'd kind of should have got a bit closer at Goodwood, should have won at York, and he'd also had question marks coming into the race around the ground. He'd previously disappointed on his only previous start on soft ground, but yeah, he looks a completely different horse. It's obviously disappointing when a 2 to 9 shot gets beaten, and you worry that the favourite hasn't ran its race. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting kind of form going forward. Like you said, they've kind of got a formidable opponent in Kyprios for next year. But yeah, Coltrane is another who looks sure to go the Ascot Gold Cup.
Got loads of Ascot form.
Yeah.
His sectionals when winning that race at Ascot were right up there with the milers that day. I mean, it was an incredible performance, his turn of foot that he showed that day. Frankie did just ruin the race, really, didn't he, with such a brilliant tactical ride, and that didn't play to Holly's strengths. She picked up a ban as well. Yeah. And you could just see the way that Truchan so weaved around, that he was almost like a cat on a hot tin roof, wasn't he? He just didn't feel confident sort of putting his foot down, even on rain softened ground on Town Moor. So yeah, Alan King, whether he decides to run anywhere else again this season, obviously France is out. There's
Champions Day
possibility there. It'd have to be really soft, but probably getting the horse's confidence back is going to be the biggest issue for him now.
Yeah, a bit of a challenge then for Alan King and Truchan, but it was good to see Coltrane going forward once again. So it still keeps the staying division interesting, although Kyprios stands head and shoulders above everything else at the moment. Also on Sunday, the Champagne Stakes, a very small field, but I think that we've seen a very good horse. I think Chaldine is something clearly out of the top drawer. Perhaps his 2 wins, or the last 2 wins, have been helped by the fact that he's made the running. But his overall style of racing, I'm really enjoying his will to get on with the job, and his desire in the late part of the race is to keep responding. I think he's exciting. What do you think, Steve? Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting Dewhurst if they go there next. 7-2, second favourite with Bet365 behind Naval Power for that. The race was obviously slightly disappointing that you only had 3 runners, but all 3 of those runners had creditable form coming into it. Frankie dictated from the front, as he does so well, doesn't he? And in truth, it never looked like Chaldine was going to get caught. Silver Knot I'd give an excuse to. He didn't seem to be in love with the ground, kind of wheel span when asked for an effort, and William Buick never really kind of went the whole hog on him. Yeah, he remains a colt full of potential, but yeah, the winner's really exciting going forward.
Yeah, I just think you've nailed it, really. His temperament and his manner through his races just looks like he wants to please, doesn't he? And, he's won at Doncaster, he's won at York. I know people say, well, they're pretty orthodox tracks, but sometimes it takes a special type of horse to go and win at those tracks. Doncaster's not always easy, and York is a different kind of terrain that some horses don't act on particularly well. So I like to see that he's added those 2 to his CV. And Andrew Bording afterwards said he was happy to keep him at 7, no need to stretch out to the mile, but he was very optimistic that a mile will be well within his compass, as his breeding would suggest as well. And notable really over that weekend, Andrew Bording, one of the Queen's trainers, winning a nice prize like that. Yeah. And also the stone race, of course. Indeed.
Chaldine, potentially the Dewhurst, but he is extremely exciting. So one to definitely look out for during the latter part of the flat season. The Flying Childers, and again, a couple of fillies here that I think, they're clearly above average. One in particular, the Platinum Queen, already proven at a high level because she ran so well in the Nunthorpe behind, potentially one of the horses of the season, the Highfield Princess. And Trillium, who is getting better and better. And I thought, even though her win was narrow, I felt that Pat Dobbs was always of the belief that he's going to get there. Yeah, the trip and the ground kind of put it into Trillium's favour, really, I think. Obviously, the Platinum Queen has proved that she does handle that softer surface, but good to firm ground is what she wants, isn't she? She's all speed. The fact that Trillium had ran and won over 6 furlongs previously, you always knew that in the final furlong it would be Trillium coming hard at the Platinum Queen, and yeah, like you said, was always confident that she was going to get there. I'm sure she'll be campaigned like a 1,000 guineas horse next season, by all account. Could obviously go for the Cheveley Park. She's kind of second favourite behind Meditate for that currently. I'm really excited about both of them going forward. I thought the 5 furlong trip and drop back in trip for Crispy Cat would suit him, and I did quite fancy him, to be honest, and he's a really good measure of the form, I think. He's just below the top level, but for them to pull 4 1/4 lengths clear of him, yes, obviously in receipt of weight, but yeah, they're genuine Group 1 horses.
Big margin over 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
When the ground's not desperate. I think we touched on it in last week's show that Richard Hannon, Trillium's trainer, felt that a bit of cut the ground wouldn't inconvenience her, and so it proved, really. I think going into the race, I was quite surprised how long the Platinum Queen sort of stayed in the race, really, on that ground as well.
Yeah.
She did a little bit where which she normally does, weaved over to the far side and was drawn
done that
to the rail.
significantly the last two starts, and I know on one or two broadcasters yesterday were suggesting that, or on Sunday were suggesting that is a bit of a concern and probably cost her. Some said, I'm not so sure that it cost a victory. I thought Pat Dobbs was always in control and was going to get there.
Yes.
But she has done it. She did it obviously in the Nunthorpe, and she did it significantly again. Is that a worry at all? Are you happy?
It might just be a trait of hers, man. It just lugs to her left a little bit. It's like, it's like having a slow start. When you go up in grade, you've just got to be gun barrel straight, have a great attitude. She's certainly got a great attitude, but sometimes she's going to start weaving around late on. That's going to leave her vulnerable, isn't it? I think Trillium is definitely next year's horse as well. Just listening to the excellent Adelma Rennan on ITV doing her paddock stuff, and she was just a bit up on the back end, and she's not furnished yet. So I think next year you'll see a much better horse.
Exciting. Both horses remain exciting.
Yeah.
Trillium and the Platinum Queen. A word about the Park Stakes, because we have got a real 7 furlong specialist in Kin Ross. 7 furlong, soft ground. You can set your watch, clock, any type of ticking device by him. He is superb in those sort of conditions, and Frankie Dettori rode him with a great deal of confidence, and it was borne out by, I imagine, in your opinion, Steve, but the way he got away from them in late on. Yeah,
if you'd backed him at odds on, you wouldn't have had too many troubles kind of throughout that race. He always looked in control. Like you said, 7 furlongs on soft ground is definitely what he wants. Goes for the foray next. I went back and watched his run in it last year. Just got a little bit too far back. Frankie probably asked him too much to do. And in fairness to Frankie, that was the first time he rode him that day. I think the horse, it does take a little bit of knowing. They've developed into a really good relationship since. And the foray is around 7-2 for that.
I think that's very fair.
So do I.
I think that's very fair. I think, he's obviously got the experience from last year. Like you say, Frankie's big point afterwards was that he knows the horse a lot better now. If they get a bit of dig in the ground, Paris, early October, which you can't imagine it wouldn't be in a couple of weeks' time, should be absolutely perfect for him. And that dead 7, there's not many 7 furlong specialists, is there? But he's certainly one of them.
He definitely is a specialist of that trip. He'll take the beating anywhere he goes where it's 7 furlongs on soft ground. Let's move to Ireland. On Saturday, one of the best training performances of the season. A horse who at the start of the season, Luxembourg, everyone felt was going to be a star. He ran well in the Guineas. Then, of course, he picked up an injury, came back, won the Royal Whip, but in a scramble. Were you expecting this sort of performance from him in the Irish Champion, Steve?
Not at all. I thought I'd got Luxembourg beat last time in the Royal Whip. Tipped insinuendo on this episode. It kind of, that performance probably meant I underestimated him coming into this race. I mean, you always knew that Aidan would have left something to work on, and he's obviously such a fantastic trainer. This is his record 11th win in the race. So, I was probably a bit silly to doubt him, to be honest. The way that he travelled into the race was notably better than in that Royal Whip Stakes. Showed a really good attitude late on as well to beat Ernesto. I know Aidan was talking around the arc afterwards. I don't think a mile and a half would be an issue to him at all. That seemed the logical target going forward. I'm not a huge jockey basher myself, but I didn't think Christophe Soumillon gave Verdani the best of rides. No. I'm not talking out my pocket. I actually fancied Mishriff for the race. But the way that he kind of had to cut to the inside of Stone Age when he was coming kind of back to the field, I didn't think was probably the best decision in the world. And a rematch in the arc between the two of them would be some race, really. Mishriff was obviously the kind of big disappointment, I suppose. Another demolition from Baid. There's only so many times a horse will empty its petrol and not want to then not do it the next time.
Connections were blaming ground again. You feel it's more than that?
I wonder when I see horses like get into a habit of slow starts as well, that always just sets the alarm bells a little bit for me that perhaps you're not quite in love with this as you used to be. Yeah. He's had some tough tests, hasn't he, Mishriff? He's been all around the world a few times. He's had some hard races. I just wonder whether this was one step too far for him and whether he perhaps would have been wise to perhaps avoid this race. I think reading Soumillon's quotes afterwards, it was almost as if they used this race very much as a tee-up, really, for Verdeni. Hadn't done a lot since the eclipse 70 days previous. Would he go Arc or will he go our Champion Stakes? I don't know.
He's 16 to 1 at the moment with Bet365 for the Arc. Luxembourg is 6 to 1. Ernesto 12s. Obviously by 2 to 1 favourite, Alpinista 30 to 2. Title holder 8s, last year's winner Torquato Tasso 10s. I mean, Verdeni at 16 to 1 on the back of that run.
Yeah.
Where arguably I think he's unlucky not to have finished a lot closer to them.
Yeah, like Steve said, I thought, I'm not sure I bashed Soumillon too much.
No.
But on the flip side, I thought I'd be more positive about the ride that Ryan Moore gave. It was an archetypal Leopardstown ride, wasn't it? In that slingshot position, down the outside, keep everything on the left penned in and keep them locked up as he did, force them all on the inside.
Well, I thought the tactics from the gates by the Coolmore team, Stone Age and Broome, were in the right position. You know, Ryan Moore he was always one off the rail.
Yeah.
He never got in behind anything, so he always gave himself the option of coming to challenge when he wanted to. He never ever gave up the outside. He always kept the outside clear.
Yeah.
I thought tactically they nailed it.
Yeah, I just thought you saw that, as I say, that not the foreign jockeys, but obviously Pasquier and Soumillon, they were sort of locked up a little bit, and Keane and Ryan Moore were, just because they ride Leopardstown, you know, week in, week out, they just looked as though they were better positioned on their horses if they were good enough, and Luxembourg was.
Yeah, I thought it was a wonderful race. Yeah. If I had to ask you to pick one horse out of that race that you would back in the Arc, if you had to, from that race, which one would it be?
At the prices, I'd probably go for Verdeni. But I think, obviously, that price of 16 to 1 also factors in the fact that he might not go to the race and skip it for the Champion Stakes as well. But I do think that's a big price for a horse that you can give valid excuses for in the build-up to the race.
The only thing I'd say is, you think of connections, and I'd say Aga Khan owned, you know, that stable, that not often would they send a horse to the Champion Stakes in preference to the Arc.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing I'd say.
Yeah, quite possibly. I don't think I'd back any of them for the Arc, to be honest.
If you had to, from that race. That's the...
Luxembourg, you know, he's had a halted preparation, he's getting better. I would say his graph is still going upwards.
The real reason I asked that question is I cannot be adamant that Luxembourg will, because when you look at the other two, one hasn't, I don't think, had the best ride nor prep for the race, or as in it wasn't 100% firing. And the other horse, Ernesto, is clearly better over further and did well to get into the race.
Yeah, I thought he ran really well, to be fair.
His form is strong over, you know, a mile and a half. He's proven his best stuff. So a bit between them at the moment. Obviously, more chat about the Arc still to come in this Racing Weekly podcast. But we're going to talk about another very good race on Saturday, the Matron Stakes, which went the way of Pearls Galore. There was a little bit of being on the front end seemed to suit. Do you feel that was part of the beneficiary of her? Because obviously Saffron Beach, who sat second, they filled the first two spots.
I do, looking back at the races throughout, it was definitely paid to be prominent at least. Cheap pieces seemed to really help her as well. And the tactics employed, obviously making the run-in, would have been kind of, the obvious choice really with headgear going on. She obviously had good form in the race from last year, only beating a neck in it. But it was a big price because of her kind of heavy defeat in France last time behind Saffron Beach. And looking at that, you've got excuses for her. The ground that day, the fact that it was a straight track as opposed to obviously a turning track here. I actually thought Saffron Beach was going to go past her and just never quite got there. And I couldn't quite believe it when I looked back at the race and saw that the winning length, 3 lengths at the finish. I hadn't quite realised how far clear she'd actually gone for it. Obviously, Homeless Songs we need to touch on, finished third. Was it the trip or was it fitness, really? They're talking about dropping her down to 7 furlongs for the foray next. I'm just not sure she was fit. She travelled well into the race and then just kind of emptied late on. I know obviously she hadn't been seen for, I think it was 111 days in the run-up to it. Whether Weld kind of will kick himself for that, I'm not sure, but I thought it was more fitness due to trip. I'd be happy to give her another chance over a mile.
They were always really worried about her getting the mile. She shows that much speed. They weren't bothered about coming back to 6, were they? No. So Maybe there's a little that. She was pretty free early on as well, which didn't help her hope to get the mile. Just further evidence of the genius that's Paddy Toomey, though, isn't it? I mean, what an incredible trainer he is.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely astonishing. In hindsight, she's probably gone off a big price, hasn't she? Horse has got beaten in neck, 16-1, and I know he suffered a little bit of a reverse at the Curragh, obviously with Le Petit Coco, but he was such a brilliant trainer of fillies as well. I mean, train anything, but the way that he handles those fillies and mares is astonishing.
His record in the last 12 to 18 months is something extraordinary.
Yeah, and look what he's competing against, as we've touched on before, you know, the O'Briens of this world, the Ger Lyons, the the Dermot Wells, etc.
No doubt we'll see, hopefully, all three, Pearls Galore, Saffron Beach and Homeless Songs a bit more. I think you mentioned the foray, potentially, for Homeless Songs.
Yeah.
Homeless Songs against Kinross.
Yeah,
who wins?
Be a good one. I'd still be with Kinross.
Yeah, I think I probably would be as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, you know, you've got Frankie on as well. Yeah. Experience of Longchamp, that helps.
All right. I cannot wait to talk about the next race that we're looking back on, because for anyone who backed Highfield Princess when she was beaten off a mark of
57, was it?
57, was it up at Ayr?
Yeah.
A while back.
And
to say that
Napter in the Daily Mail. Yeah.
She would win 3 Group 1s on the bounce in the space of 5 weeks, and she's currently 2-1 favourite for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, which is her next target. You would have probably been taken away with everything tied up, particularly
again
covering your mouth so you wouldn't speak such silly statements ever again. It's the most remarkable turnaround from those days. I mean, what a horse, what a filly, what a training performance by the team to get this horse to do this. What did you think when you saw her win on the weekend?
I thought, blimey, we're going to be mentioning her again on this show, because every week she wins in a preview, and then every week we then review her. It's just incredible. 3 Group 1s in 5 weeks. She's just absolutely amazing. If you, again, I said it earlier on, if you'd have backed her, you didn't have a moment's worry at all through the whole race. It's just unbelievable. You don't get performances like that in Group 1 sprints over 5 furlongs where you have no cause for concern.
The race at the Nunthorpe at York was pretty much the same, wasn't it? It was like a point and shoot, and from halfway you thought, well,
and all
this
the
is all
pre-race
over.
chat about where do you want to be drawn in this race? Well, I'd be there. It doesn't matter. And there was a moment I was thinking, was she in the right spot? Yes, it doesn't matter, because she travels easy. She's always in the best spot, and then she goes away.
But what amazes me is that, like, John Quinn set out, and Sean has set out this, you know, very ambitious plan, starting with the Nunthorpe and then going to France, and then, you know, ended up we're going for the Flying Five, and then we're going to the Breeders' Cup, and everyone's going, okay, fair enough. You know, that's
bold.
Yeah, absolutely, quite ambitious, isn't it? Anyway, they're 3 from 3. I was the last horse to win 3 Group 1 sprints. Blue Point, 2019. Yeah. Muhara won 4, 2015. And she's just what I love about her is that she's just proved her versatility over trip, track, continent almost.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
she's
France,
going to go,
England, and obviously
different countries. And now she's going to be off to America. You know, I mean, that would be just an unbelievable story if she wins over there.
Well, she did. She'd be lining up against Golden Pal, and obviously Golden Pal on his turf is a different proposition, but that's going to be an exciting clash. I mean, I'd still fancy Highfield Princess against anybody.
I had my maximum on her at Wolverhampton as well, over 5. She was 2-1.
And?
In the winter. Well, I think she finished second, didn't she?
Oh, the Ray Guest filly.
They had to run in that to qualify for all-weather finals day.
Yes.
And I opposed her all-weather finals day because it was over a stiff 7 at Newcastle. So I've read her right all the way through her career.
Well done.
Top work, isn't it?
Yeah, what a filly. Cannot wait to see her. And I think we spoke about the fact that she is heading to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint as opposed to going for the Abbey. They're going to skip that. Give her a little rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think John and Sean fancy a trip to America as well. Sean certainly will.
Eros and Psyche, who ran such a fine race. The Air Gold Cup, the plan?
Possibly. I mean, rated 103, his days in handicaps will be numbered. But yeah, if they're going to go for another big handicap,
now's the time.
Now's the time, isn't it, before Saturday?
Absolutely.
Another fantastic training performance from Paddy Toomey, and we'll touch on that race later on in the preview.
We will indeed. The Irish Ledger. Sam, there's been a lot of chat all season long. Stradivarius, Trushan, Even Quickthorn, after he won so well at York, there's no doubt who the number one stayer is now. Clearly, it is Kyprios. But have we appreciated just how good a horse Kyprios is?
Probably not, and we do have a little bit of a habit of that, I think. You know, you watch these horses win the races and, you eulogise over them, and then you think, well, maybe he's not quite as good as Yates, or maybe he's not quite as good as Stradivarius, or maybe this and maybe that, and you try and find ways to beat them the next time that they run. And I think this lad, he's been a bit of a slow burner for people, I think, but I think he's winning them over now, and I thought that was a tremendous performance in the Irish Ledger. I mean, you've got a good horse in Hamish, who travelled up and looked like he could take him at any point. You've got Ray's You, who's a Curragh specialist, just couldn't make any ground on them in the straight as the two of them stretched clear. It looked a proper horse race, and Kyprios, just his guts and his will to win, aligned with his class and the way that he's obviously campaigned and trained. You've got a very formidable force going forward in staying races.
Yeah, of course, Search for a Song, a previous winner of the race, in behind, she couldn't land a significant blow. Her stay was in form, and she was back to form. But the thing I liked about Kyprios was, I love the way Ryan Moore rides him. I think it's important that Ryan Moore rides him as well, because he clearly knows when he needs to put his foot on the pedal to go harder. Even from the gates, he was keen to take a prominent position. And he ensured that, as well as anything was travelling in behind him, you're going to have to empty yourself out if you're going to go past him. Yeah,
it's his temperament for Kyprios that's just so good. Like you said, Ryan Moore had to kind of rush him up to get a prominent position and then just settled. It was just, you look back at Trushan's performance, pulled hard for a mile of the race, and Kyprios, right, okay, go on, get in that position, and then, right, I'm just going to chill for a little bit here. And he's just absolutely amazing. This was the first performance that I've gone, wow, you know what, I'm not going to oppose you now. Because he's settled beautifully in the race. Ryan had him in exactly the right place, and then he's asked to go. He's asked to go fairly early as well, and they're all going to stack up behind him and have a go, and he's just seen them off one by one. I thought it was absolutely great. If he stays injury-free, how many Gold Cups could he win? Like, he's incredible, really.
They're good horses in behind, aren't they? Search for a Song, I know she probably hasn't, excelled so much this year, but Ray's You, I mean, goes around the Curragh on rails. And 7 or 8 lengths he was beaten and just couldn't make any ground. They were just relentless in front, weren't they, the two of them? And Hamish, when we see him, he's a really talented horse. He's just got his elements, and they have to train him very carefully.
Yeah, a mile 6, 2.5 miles. Talk of the arc, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that at all. Obviously, they did it with Order of St John, didn't they? And he ran really well placed in it. But they also did it with Stradivarius. And he'd never seemed the same horse afterwards. I hope they keep him as a stayer. And just a quick little thing on Search for a Song, obviously lovely story, full sister to Kyprios as well. So that was nice. There's a nice little picture of both of them together for Moyglare stud as well.
Yeah, obviously Moyglare put a lot into that sort of Curragh card as well. So great to see them having big performances on their day.
Okay, speaking of Moyglare and siblings, can we talk about one of the performances of the weekend? A filly by the name of Tahira, who is a half-sister to Tanawa, trained like Tanawa by Dermot Weld, and she beat Meditate, who had previously looked magnificent. And in fairness, she looked pretty good in defeat yesterday, but she didn't look in the same class as Tahira, who looks another world class.
Yeah, I was watching the race thinking, blimey, you're quite confident on her. You've waited too long. Oh, wow, you've gone. Yeah. It's just incredible, really. I then had to go back and watch it, and I thought, was Meditate kind of tied up a bit at the finish? But you look at the distance between her and the third, and it stays the same. And Tahira just goes further and further clear. I mean, she's now 1,000 guineas favourite with Bet365 for next year. I wouldn't be in a rush to take that, if I'm honest. It wouldn't surprise me with Dermot Weld whether he kind of holds her back a little bit. Irish 1,000 guineas might be the obvious aim. But wow, wherever she goes, she's going to be good to watch, isn't she?
Electrifying, wasn't it? It was one of those performances that you were just watching thinking, on that ground, we didn't see many horses really lengthen and quicken. It was more of a grinder's day, wasn't it, at the Curragh? It was in horrible conditions. It looked like December for most of the card. And the fact that she actually just skipped through that ground and skipped past an Albany winner, multiple group race winner, who had her own way in front, was just a tremendous performance, I thought.
And the pedigree suggests that mile and a quarter, mile and a half, to travel and win as nicely as that as a 2-year-old over 7, with that scope in the pedigree to do other things over further. I mean,
Yeah.
The package is something else.
On only a second start as well.
Well,
like
that's
Meditate
the
obviously
point,
had the experience as well, and God, she's just so exciting going forward.
Yeah, I mean those horses that win their maiden, you know, and obviously won at Galway, and Dermot Wells introduced a lot of nice horses at Galway. It's obviously a place that he's got a lot of affection for. But then to jump straight in against some battle-hardened juveniles and do what she did there, that's rare talent, that is.
That is indeed. Can we last two things I'm going to talk about. One is Al Riffa winning the National Stakes. Now, Joseph O'Brien made no secret of the fact that he bought this horse to be a 3-year-old. So it must be quite exciting for all concerned to see him as precocious as he's proved already.
Obviously justified their supplementary fee as well. So yeah, even if he was going to be a 3-year-old, they obviously put their hand in their pocket for it. Great for Dylan Brown McMonagall to obviously win his first Group 1 on there as well. Did the favourite run up to form, Aesop Sables? I'm not so sure. But yeah, it was a great performance, and yeah, an exciting horse for next year.
Yeah, I detect a little bit of a question mark over the validity of the form, because I thought Johnny Murtaugh's horse, Shartash, also the run, even though he got a clear run in the end, I don't think the way it developed suited him. I think he's better than that, and he obviously represents the Little Big Bear form.
Yes.
So I felt there were one or two unsatisfactory elements to the horses in behind, but take nothing away from a horse who's still got plenty of room to improve, I suppose. Yeah,
I don't think we've seen anywhere near the best of this lad yet. You look at the size of him, the scope he's got. He's quite an enormous model, and I think he's really going to fill out through the winter and become a very, very talented horse next year. Lovely for the lad riding as well, Dylan Brown McMonagall. Everybody says what a great attitude he has, great temperament, good kid, works hard. Good to see him getting the opportunities at Joseph's, but really, really talented colt, that Al Riffa. Liked him a lot.
I said there was one or two more things, a couple more things. I've still got more things. Just picking up from a couple of things at Doncaster, Polypot, one for Harry Dunlop. Obviously, the way it works in racing is you announce you're going to retire, or you're going to quit the training ranks, and then suddenly, winner after winner after winner, and then you pop a horse rated in the mid-70s in a Group 2 race, and there we go. Easy as that. Polypot sprang a surprise is an understatement, I'd say. Yeah,
40-1. Well done for anyone that found it. I didn't really give her a chance. I think you can excuse the favourite. Dancing in the Grass just seemed to be on the wrong part of the track, really. But I wouldn't take away from the winner. Yeah.
Polypot landed a big pot. 80s into 40s as well, wasn't unbacked. Travelled beautifully through the race and came and picked off the selection. Another kind.
And on a run as well. So we don't know how good Polypot is, because she's won. I think she won 4 prior to that, then now that, and she's climbing. Possible, Ben Pauling, who she's going to go into training with, might have a live classic contender on his hands.
Yeah, that's a strange one, isn't it? I hadn't seen that news line, if I'm honest. You've caught me on the hop a little bit.
I was obviously on Thursday with Harry Dunlop, and I said, you're going to hang around, maybe give it one more season for this. And he said, no, Ben Pauling's going to take her, so we'll see how that goes.
Good luck, Ben.
She might have another run this season in a Group 1 race. They're trying to think about that. And the last thing I'm going to mention from the last weekend or so, Adayar. Back with a win. The Derby winner. There was a spell, I must admit, I thought, we're not going to see him again, are we? I mean, he obviously last season won the King George, came back. Arc and Champion Stakes runs were okay. Then he was supposed to come back at various junctures through the season. We haven't seen him. It's now September. Are we ever going to see him? But I really like what he did. I know he had nothing to beat in terms of the races that he's got coming ahead of him, but I'm excited for what he can still do.
Yeah, I wasn't hugely in love with it. I know, obviously, no, he seemed to.
What did you like?
Head carriage was a little bit to one side, and I know William Buick hasn't really asked him a lot there, but in a 3-runner race, you can only do what can be asked. But yeah, it's not going to put me off backing him for next time. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people like yourselves get very excited about the comeback, and I was just slightly sort of lukewarm on him going forward, if I'm honest.
I'll just have the pin.
I was going to say, he's got your chips and he's poured water on them, hasn't he?
It'd be worse if he'd eaten them. Now
that would have hurt him. That would have hurt you. I'd see his next start as a nice stepping stone for him. He beat the Derby 4th very comfortably, never looked in danger. Nice bit of routine work, really.
I also like the fact that he settled in behind, having obviously made the running.
Tough in a 3-runner race, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the fact that he dropped the bridle and moved through the race comfortably, and then never had to do anything to go miles clear.
I wouldn't mind owning him. I'd be happy to own him.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Who
take
would you have
him
him in
on.
training with? You stick with Charlie and move him around a bit?
Probably wouldn't be Ben Pauling. No, I'd just send him my hurdlers and my chasers, Ben. I've no problem with him as a trainer, but I wouldn't be sending him quality flat horses, I don't think.
That's kind. The owners of Polypot will be referring to this comment next year when Ben Pauling
she's
takes
won
the
a
Guinness.
Guinness. Yeah, absolutely.
His first classic runner.
Yeah.
Baid obviously is favourite for the Champions Stakes should he go there. Odds on. Verdani 6-1, Luxembourg 7s, Adayar 8s. So not of interest to you, Adayar?
Not at the minute. I'd like to see what he does next.
This is likely to be his next run, isn't it?
Is that going to be his last run?
Definitely ruled out the art.
What else is in that betting for that race?
But beyond that, Nashwa 8-1, Ernesto 8-1, Bay Bridge 10s.
Right.
Lord North, Maljun, don't know what the plan is for him.
Yeah.
Dubai on obviously placed in the race last year. Mishref, Tuesday. I mean, then you've got a day, Native Trail, bigger prices.
Haven't really got to stand out.
No.
You know,
And
those
they
at the
are
top of the
8 to
market.
1.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's his nominated target,
Well,
he's a good thing, Steve. He's a good
if
thing.
Baid goes for the arc, for the
Yeah.
arc, Adayar would be what?
Well,
Do you just want me to smile at you and say, yes, I'll back him at 8-1 for the Champions Stakes, Rich?
If you were to back him, now's the time, right?
Yeah. Ernesto's not going to run, is it? What price is
Leicester's
he?
going to go for the arc. Verdani's probably going to go for the arc. Luxembourg's going to go for the arc. Baid's a 2-5 favourite and Adayar's 8-1.
Right.
So you're betting
I loved the performance of Adayar.
Yeah.
This is it. You will remember this day. Adayar was 8-1 for this race.
Yeah. And Rishi put him up.
Absolutely bolted up.
Rishi put him up and I on his chips.
He ate my chips. Okay. Anything else from the last week on the track?
Only another one from Doncaster, Mimic You. I thought the application of a hood, was a big gamble, sort of 16s into I think about 11 to 2. Hood really worked, was far too keen at York. But yeah, she obviously won the Park Hill Stakes, anywhere between 1.5 miles and 1.6 miles in those fillies races.
Yep.
I'd be with her next time. Yeah.
The family obviously
Journey
appreciated a
and
little bit of
could go
a
to
hood
fillies
here
and
and there.
mares Champions Day.
Yeah.
And let's give a mention to Streets of Gold. Eve Johnson Hatton.
Wow,
4 from 4 now. Horse that doesn't do a tap at home. Won nearly €150,000.
Yeah.
Yesterday with a nice performance following up that nursery win at Doncaster. 4 from 4. Tremendous. Hated the ground as well, apparently.
Yeah, it didn't look look comfortable on the ground
No.
at all. But did the job.
Yeah.
What a horse he's been. Quite excited to see what he'll do next, Streets of Gold, where he could run.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have to take on something better to ascertain
Why
where
not?
they are.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's won sort of 185,000 in prize money this year,
Yeah.
so you might as well have a pop at something.
All right, a lot of excellent racing that we've looked back on, and we've got the winner of the Champions Stakes without Baid, obviously.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for that look back, and I think, in fairness, we have seen an absolutely high quality last few days on the racecourse. So that has been this week's Racing Recap. Now on Racing Weekly, we're going to look ahead to a couple of big races at the end of the next week, and in particular the Air Gold Cup, 2 races, that and the Mill Reef, that have at least got some interest for punters as much as anything else. The Air Gold Cup, though, there are a lot of familiar faces lining up for this race once again, and I guess, Sam, it's the type of race that you'd want to sort of find something that obviously has a bit in hand, is coming back to form, because there are a lot of horses there that you think, I don't know, are they the right spot in the handicap because of what they've done?
Yes,
Not
absolutely.
Done, actually, in some positions.
Well, very true. I think we've got the potential of having certainly the first, second and third from last year. Mr Wagyu third. Bielsa then beat Great Ambassador, came up the stand-side rail, didn't he? Bielsa, the only horse on the stand-side rail. So you could look at it 2 ways. Either he was advantaged by that, or he was disadvantaged with racing on his own and was still good enough to win by 2.5 lengths. Great Ambassador won his side of the track very comfortably as well. I think he's got to have a massive shout again this year. I thought he ran really well in the Stewards Cup. Didn't get the luck in running there. Was drawn on the wrong side of the track. Didn't have many behind him with about a furlong to run, and then picked up really well. despite getting a bump and finished 6th. I thought he ran quite nicely as well in the Hackwood behind Minzal, was only beaten 3 lengths there, so that form speaks for itself. And his run in the listed race last time at Newmarket was pretty handy. Looked as though his connections have kept him away from handicaps, primarily this year, in order just to try and preserve his mark and keep him right for this. So I think he's got a big chance. He was stuck on the wing a little bit over on that far side rail at Ayr 12 months ago. I think Mr. Wagyu, 3rd at the Curragh over the weekend, another brilliant run, only overhauled late on.
What a season.
Well, what a season the stable sprinters are having, aren't they? So I wouldn't be surprised to see him there and thereabouts again. And the other one's Kanjar, who picked up a penalty for that Haydock win. He's got the £5 penalty for the Haggis team. He looks very much a sprinter going places in those Shadwell colours, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him run really well. He's 34th on the list, maximum field of 25, but I think so far, great ambassador. He's been well found in the market, but he'd certainly be one on my short list, and good old Mr. Wagyu, I think.
Okay. Any initial thoughts on this race?
Yeah, it was great ambassador. Sam's obviously made a strong case for. He was on my short list. Heroes and Psyche that we touched on earlier will no doubt be well in at the weights. Followers than that, 2nd in the Flying 5, so it'll be interesting if obviously he goes for it. And also Bielsa, who obviously won the race last year by 2.25 lengths. So it does take some doing sort of in these 6 furlong handicaps really. Only £1 higher this year. It doesn't quite arrive in the same form, but yeah, he wouldn't be the first horse to win back-to-back big handicaps, would he?
Plaudits to Kevin Stott as well 12 months ago, didn't he? Because he rode in his lane all the way up the standside rail and was rewarded handsomely. One other horse to mention, the 4th, Motogali, who ran in the Portland over the weekend. I thought he ran really well, actually. He looked like he was going to drop out of furlong out, and then he's just kept finding and grinding. Obviously 4th in the Ayr Gold Cup. 5th of 19 in the Portland as well. I think if he runs in the Silver Cup for Scott Dixon, I think he'd definitely be one of interest.
Okay.
If he gets a good draw.
I don't know if she'll definitely take a chance, but if she does, I mean, just want to see Gail Force-Meyer run well. It's a horse I haven't quite got right, but every time I down her, she produces a performance, and obviously she'll have top weight. But it's been the most remarkable season. She seems to be getting better. Her recent form, all her best recent form, they have come on better ground, good to firm. There is a victory on softish ground way back in the past, but she's also disappointed on softish ground. So, just wanted to run well again this season. But I do like Bielsa again. I'll give her another shot.
She's brilliant, and she Gail Force-Meyer. She's one of the few horses I do actually get right. Just back her at York. Or
I was going to say.
Yeah, those are the only 2 places she seems to do it. But another example, really, of Michael Dodds and his sprinters. You know, it's just phenomenal with them, isn't he?
Absolutely. Any thoughts on the Mill Reef Stakes? Because I imagine ground is going to play an important factor because we know exactly what they'll be facing. But early thoughts on it, Steve?
Yeah, I thought Clive Cox obviously won the race last year with Wings of War and previously won it with Harry Angel. So it's obviously a race that he targets. He's got a heroism. Looks worthy of respect in here if he was to run. He kind of upset a 2-7 shot to win on his debut at Salisbury. Now that form hasn't worked out too well since, but looking at an interview afterwards, trainer expects him to improve from that run, and wasn't going to be inconvenienced by any change in the ground either. It's obviously difficult to know what's going to run at this stage, but yeah, he'd be top of my shortlist currently, so heroism for me.
Sam?
Yeah, Hannon's got 9 entries, Carl Burt's got 5. Aidan O'Brien's got 4, so it'd be interesting to see what they choose and pick for this Group 2. Obviously, the headline act probably would be Sakir if he ran. And that was only 2 weeks on from Haydock when he bolted up and created such a good impression there. Son of Zophany, cost him 550k, obviously in the colours of Eldar Eldarov. Whether he comes here off the back of that Haydock win, I don't know, or whether they save him for something like the Middle Park. Mischief Magic, one of your favourite horses in training, won at Kempton when you were there in the Sarenia Stakes.
In fairness, he only became my favourite after he won at Kempton.
Yeah, a bit of recency bias, wasn't it?
Generally my motto in life, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd be surprised if another Harry Angel, Marshman, doesn't run. Yeah. Obviously 2nd in the gym crap behind Noble Style. Carbert's got 5 entries. He looks possibly the most likely, and that gym crack form advertised quite nicely last week at Doncaster by Cold Case.
Yeah, he would be my selection of those likely contenders now, primarily because of that Jim Crack form. Noble Style, very impressive. I thought Marshman actually had the Jim Crack one, and Noble Style ran him down, and there was a long way back to Cold Case and everything else.
Yes.
Obviously, Cold Case came out and won at Doncaster, so...
I think his rider just felt that day on Marshman that, hitting the front too soon, he just lost a bit of concentration perhaps, in Noble Style quality horse in his own right, picked him off.
Yeah, and although, in fairness, Connections made the point that the run at York came just a week after that impressive win on his second start.
They had to roll the dice, didn't they?
Understandable. But I think now that he's had a little few weeks between that last run, I'm excited by what he can do next, and also to help frank that form. I think that Gimcrack might work out all right. It really is working out okay.
Are we going to see Persian Force again as well? On the go since the 26th of March. 6 starts, second in a Phoenix, second in a pre-morning. Yeah. Won a July Stakes, second in a Coventry.
Very consistent. That's the sort of horse that you'd like to own?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind owning that. Picking up a few checks there, aren't you?
Which trainer would you send it to?
I'd be happy with Hannon. I think he's done a fairly decent job. No, it wouldn't be Ben, no, not unless it's shown a right aptitude for jumping hurdles.
Okay, I think that's just about it. Steve, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, sitting in the pundit's chair as well.
Yeah.
Sam, as always, thank you very much. Obviously, it's a week of reflection that we've had in the sport of horse racing. It's been a pleasure to have your company. The sport will continue reflecting and being grateful for what Her Majesty the Queen has done for the sport over the last, however many decades that we've been lucky and privileged enough to have her supporting the sport of horse racing. Here on Racing Weekly, we send our deepest condolences once again to the royal family. We take our opportunity to pay our respects to Her Majesty the Queen, and we say goodbye from Racing Weekly. Don't forget that if you liked what you've seen or heard in this or any previous episode, then please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube. We're back next week. We'll have a look at the Cambridgeshire meeting and all the good 2-year-old races that are coming up at Newmarket. Hopefully, we'll have a few winning selections, and hopefully by then, we're all on Adayar for the Champion Stakes. But for now, from everyone on Racing Weekly, bye-bye.